Jessica Dubroff is the daughter of Lloyd Dubroff and Lisa Blair Hathaway. At age 4, she moved from Massachusetts to the San Francisco Bay. Her parents separated soon after arriving in California, though they stayed close. Jessica likes riding horses, and she takes money that she earns on her paper route several times a week to the post office and mails it to a child in South America. For her 6th birthday, she finds another passion when she takes her first flying lesson with Joe Reed, an instructor at Half Moon Bay Airport. As with all instruction planes, though Jessica is manipulating the controls, her flight instructor sits next to her with dual controls for the plane. In 1996, when Jessica is 7 years old, her parents ask her if she wants to fly across the country and stop in and see her grandfather for her 8th birthday. She quickly agrees and a route is planned, and her father Lloyd and Joe Reed are to accompany her. The trip is dubbed the Sea to Shining Sea trip and would make Jessica the youngest to pilot across the USA, taking the record from a then 8-year-old.
Pescadero is a close-knit farming community of only about 2,000 people. Jessica became an instant celebrity here when she announced that she would fly across the country.
Minutes before, Jessica's father said the cross-country flight of an 11-year-old girl inspired this mission.
And it occurred to me a couple of months ago, Jess had been taking lessons for 2 or 3 months, that gosh, she could do that. She was coming along well enough. And I asked her if that's something she would like to do. I said I would sponsor it. I'd fund it if she wanted to. And she said, yeah, she'd really like to do that.
He said, can Jess fly cross country when she's 8 and go see her grandpa?
Hats were made to commemorate the trip and were handed out to friends, with extras to be given out on the trip.
Will you say bye to me on the radio after you're up?
I will.
Okay, I'll be beating for it, Jess.
The news media finds out about the flight shortly before the first leg is attempted, and Jessica garners national attention as she gets ready to fly out of Half Moon Bay Airport in Half Moon Bay, California. Jessica makes all her stops on the first day, though she is flying into a headwind that slows them down. She is greeted by people coming out to see the young ace at every stop. She flies until night and ends the first leg in Sky Harbor Airport in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Glad to have you in Cheyenne. All right.
Well, we gotta think about not crashing or doing any mistakes like that.
Do you ever think about, does that scare you?
No.
You seem pretty fearless.
Yeah.
You keep looking at the plane. Are you concerned about it?
No?
What do you think about, your dad's a pretty special guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Are you excited about your next leg of your trip?
Yeah.
What do you want to do throughout this whole thing? Do you want to break a record?
Yeah, I wanna break the record.
Do you think you're going to do it?
Yeah.
If you're a young person listening to this, I'd urge you to take on challenges. Make sure your parents, well, you'll take on some your parents won't approve of, and that's the way it goes. We all did. But challenge yourself and reach for a little more than you think you can do. I'd be interested, really. This started off as a father-daughter adventure. It's gotten wonderfully out of hand. We didn't go into this thinking book deal or movie deal or any of that nonsense.
After a night in a hotel, they are back at the airport prepping their plane for the next leg of the journey.
7-year-old Jessica Dubroff's hopes of becoming the youngest person to fly across country and back died with her this morning when her tiny Cessna crashed onto a street in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Jessica, her father, and her flight instructor impact. Investigators say it's too early to say what caused the crash or even to say who was at the controls.
It seemed like it was trying to land, and then it just lost something, fell off on one wing and went right in.
It was never gaining any altitude, more of maybe 200 or 300 feet at the most. It continued to climb, but with the heavy rain, and the plane was clearly overloaded, and it was just never gaining any altitude. It made a big arc. It came across kind of over Buttrey's grocery store, and as I was turning into the parking lot to work, it literally just turned over and dropped. It went straight into the ground.
Single-engine Cessna crashed in a residential neighborhood just a half-mile beyond the end of the runway. Witnesses say it spiraled straight down like a dart. The Cheyenne police chief was one of the first on the scene. He believes whoever the pilot was, Jessica or her flight instructor, he believes that pilot died a hero trying to avoid home.
I can tell you that the plane missed a house, and I don't know how it did, but I would like to think that maybe the last effort was to miss that house.
The Guinness Book no longer recognizes the youngest pilot record because of the danger of mishaps such as today's. But the FAA does not blame Jessica, who was legally only a passenger.
National transportation safety officials, though, say they still do not know what exactly caused the plane to crash just after takeoff. They say it could be a number of things: the weather, the altitude. Cheyenne Airport is 6,000 feet above sea level, the structural integrity of the aircraft, and/or the experience of the people flying the plane. What they do know is that the plane had difficulty from the moment it took off.
These two women told us they're lucky to be alive today. Theirs is the house the plane just missed on its plummet to Earth. The women, Jessica, steered the plane away in the final seconds.
She didn't even have a life, poor little girl. Maybe God will help her.
Elaine, we're back at the crash site tonight. As you know, the wreckage was removed from here several hours ago, but the makeshift shrine that perhaps you can see behind me, that's been growing pretty much all night long, even though it is bitter cold.
Here the other day having French fries, so, you know, I guess probably I'll need some time to just think about it, you know.
She was a happy little kid. I mean, you know, you see her out here skipping around the apron, you know, and I've seen her fly. She handled the aircraft pretty well.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, she just meant a lot to us.
I have a daughter, and it's something here in the area. I just felt compelled to bring flowers. I did not know Jessica at all.
The flag in Pescadero Town Square flew at half-staff today with flowers below as a loving tribute to Jessica Dubroff. News of her death this morning shook townspeople hard.
Started crying. I was just coming here to get my coffee and heard it on the radio.
Jessica's friends were still wearing hats today that she'd given them before taking off on her fateful cross-country flight.
I asked Jess a couple of days ago if she'd flown in the rain, and she said, oh yeah, the fog, oh yeah, the wind, oh yeah. And we talked about the difficulties of some of those things, and she recognized them and had experienced them.
She said flying is very fun, and she liked to fly very much.
It has been a difficult day for Mike Peckner. He was consulting the Dubroffs on weather conditions during their trip.
I mean, I've talked to a number of pilots today. I mean, I'm sure, I know you have, and they'll all say that they wouldn't have taken off in that weather. And that's about as simply as you can state it. And I'm not saying that I could have convinced them not to go, but I'd like to have had that opportunity.
An hour and a half ago, Jessica's mother, brother, and sister, they arrived in town from Boston. Jessica's mother has come here to perform the grim task of claiming the body.
I talked to Jess and Joe and Lloyd before the plane was started on the cellular phone. And Jess wanted to get going. She said, Mom, I hear rain. You hear the rain, Mom? You hear the rain? She's just as beautiful as she is, her free spirit. And And she said, I want to go, Mom. I want to go. I want to start the engine. I said, okay. I said, have a great time. I love you, Jess. And then I talked to her father on the plane and said, I just talked to him for a long time. I don't know. Seemed like a long time. I told him how grateful I am that he was doing this with Jess and how wonderful this was. May I hold you, Jasmine? Can I pick you up? You clear that their plane went down? Then they crashed? And they're not alive anymore? Sister, if we can find her, we'll come. I know.
When I talked to them, they're just leaving the end of the runway. They were just turning crosswind, and he said the plane's moving around a lot. It's really windy.
Joe was ejected from the plane with a seatbelt on, and Lloyd was in back behind Jess, laying on his side with his arm reached around to her. So I know he was holding her when they went down. I know his arm was around her. I know Lloyd, he put himself in front of her in any way he could.
Lisa Blair Hathaway goes to Jessica's funeral. She has spoken with the press several times and keeps insisting that children should be allowed to fly.
I beg of people to let children fly, God, if they want to fly. It's not about her age. Something was off. Clearly, Jessica either mischose or maybe it was lightning. I don't know what happened, but I know that Jess did her best in where she was when I talked to her.
The press brutalize her. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, investigates the accident and releases a report. They emphasize that the storm with high winds and rain is the cause of the accident, along with a pressing itinerary caused in part by the news media and fatigue. They also say that the plane was overweight and are sure to emphasize that Joe Reed was piloting at the time of the crash, and the blame for taking off from the airport and for the accident is his. On April 18th, just 7 days after the accident, a bill is introduced into the House known as the Child Safety Act, which prohibits pilots from allowing someone to take control of the plane if the pilot is aware that the person has no license and is attempting to set a record or aeronautical feat or aeronautical stunt. Bill Clinton signs the act into law as part of a large bill known as the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act of 1996. On the first leg of the trip, after leaving Half Moon Bay Airport, and before stopping in Cheyenne, Jessica took a nap in the plane and lost her chance at the unofficial record before the first day was over.